Hello, hello. Oh, I forgot to cover. First, a bit of a surprise for y'all. I shaved my goatee. It will be back. Just goofed a little bit while trimming it, and I couldn't make it. I couldn't even it out in a way that looked natural. So we're starting over. It's gone. It'll be back, and in greater numbers. I'll do one on each side. Um, no, but we're back. I took a couple days off last week for a couple of reasons. We'll get to that towards the end of stream, I guess. I'll talk about channel news at the end, and that'll also let you know why I missed Thursday and Friday last week. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We got iced tea today. I made some of this for that 4th of July party I mentioned I was going to on the 5th. Hey, Galit. Uh, so I have some iced tea. This is like a orange. They call it blood orange tea, but it's not with blood orange. It's orange, apple, and hibiscus, I believe. Initially, hibiscus wasn't really my flavor, but it is growing on me. I am it is becoming more appealing. So, let's talk about today. Oh, a couple of things going on. I'll start with the juiciest stuff, I guess. I have to actually find it. I didn't look it up ahead of time. Uh, but Elon Musk and um, Mark Zuckerberg had intended to fight. Now you've probably heard about this, but they had like challenged each other to like box or whatever else. Um, and there was a whole bunch of news uh, of like, oh, is it going to be a K match? But it was canceled. Allegedly, Elon Musk's mom uh, basically told him not to do it. Um, yeah. So hold on. Let me see if I can. If there's a. Yeah. Oh, there's a parody account. Okay. Ah, this doesn't actually have it. I want to actually find where. Yeah, it's like his mom told him no, so he didn't do. Okay. Uh, please don't do what you're doing. All right. Hate the new sites do this. All right, wants to put a. Okay. All right, you can stop now. All right. Well, I guess I'm not reading the San Francisco Chronicle. That's what you did. Uh, Going to MMA Mania. Gross. All right. I mean, it's not actually that gross, but yeah. So Elon Musk had plans to fight, but uh, according from what it sounds like, well, okay, yeah, okay. Actually, I canceled the fight. Mama Musk wrote on Twitter. I haven't told them yet, but I will continue to say the fight is canceled just in case. And then, like, as it turns out, the fight was ended up getting canceled. However, that is not the end of the story because the fight persists, just not in the form of physical fight. Because as it turns out, a lot of the employees that Musk fired from Twitter when he showed up there and just started indiscriminately firing people, not knowing anything about what they did, how the company worked, just getting rid of them and flooding the market with software engineers. Allegedly, a lot of those people have gone over to work at Meta, I guess not Facebook. And Meta is now introducing a Twitter clone. They call it Threads. And allegedly, according to Musk and no one else, and it really wouldn't matter if it were true or not, a lot of the people that were fired from Twitter were hired on at Meta to make this, and he's threatening legal action. Now, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what like non disclosure agreements and or whatever else these people signed or what they were or weren't allowed to do. However, if they merely used the expertise that they have as software engineers to build a product, I can't imagine why that would be a legal issue. But he's threatening it and has been losing his mind on Twitter Um, uh, he posts. Okay, all right. Every goddamn news site is just like, just posts. Zuck is a cuck. Oh, big humor from this guy. Real life Tony Stark, totally not a total moron. Um, then didn't say anything for hours and hours until he comes back and challenged Zuckerberg to a literal dick measuring contest. Um, uh, this is not the kind of thing I usually cover because I don't like. I don't Twitter. Yeah, literally here. Then just later that day, just 9 hours or like 8 hours later, he's just like, "Hey, let me be stupid in a different direction." And like I said, I don't normally go over this stuff. I don't go on Twitter. I don't have a Twitter. I don't like and it doesn't seem like it makes sense to jump on a sinking ship. But this was too hilarious not to go over, and just something to note because we can derive interesting, we could derive value from this even for how inane it is. One, I just felt like I couldn't not talk about it. It was so stupid and hilarious. But I just want to note, like, note how many articles we saw over literal tweets and like both metaphorical and literal dick measuring and pissing contests and whatever else. All this time and attention that goes to these two idiots. Why? Because they have money? Because they own the labor of so many people? I love one thing about social media, which is that it shows us so clearly how elite the rich aren't. They've pretended to be for a long time, and even now, like people dick suck Elon Musk and act like he's this uber mega genius, real life Tony Stark, yada yada, etc. But obviously he isn't. He's obviously incredibly dumb, but he has lots of money because his family has lots of money, and maybe, just maybe, we don't live in the meritocracy people claim that we do. And that's why I wanted to talk about it because it's just another very clear example of how just in no way should we assume that because someone has money that they are in any way meritorious, literally in any way. With Zuckerberg, you're like, "Oh, he made Facebook or whatever." I just want to remind everyone, even if you watch like the propaganda movie about it called The Social Network, uh, even in there they acknowledge MySpace existed. He got his idea allegedly from the Winklevoss twins, another couple of dipshit rich assholes. Is that innovative, or is it just that he got backed by actually a buddy of Elon Musk? Oh, I'm blanking on his name. Peter Thiel, who is now kind of a Nazi, a little bit. But I won't get into that. But he had the backing of a mega donor who could fund this enterprise. Is that is that merit? I don't think so. Where did Peter Thiel get his money from? From PayPal, the idea of banking, but on a computer. Cool, like that's nice and all, but he didn't build it. He owned a part of it. These aren't this we don't as much as people pretend, and like as much as capitalism is kind of built on the assumption that a meritocracy exists and like anyone can rise to the top if they're good enough. Clearly the people at the top aren't there because they're valuable. The things that they might have the skills they might have are not things that are necessarily productive. They are things that are good at making money, and those are not the same thing. So that's why I wanted to talk about that. It's a brief version, but it's like a brief interlude. But we're gonna do a little bit of jumping around today. The next thing I want to talk about actually was my weekend. Over the weekend, I judged another tournament, another RCQ, again in Pioneer, and just wanted to talk about it a little bit. I know, for you in particular, Elite, it's not going to be particularly interesting. But if like Peachy Keen is in, I know he plays Magic. If anyone else plays Magic, might find it interesting. Um, for one, I was having a lot of fun with it. I had fallen off of judging mostly during the pandemic, and I was like, my career's building, and maybe I don't need to go back to this. But I've been having fun with it. I'm actually kind of interested in getting back into it, and actually doing the Judge Academy thing, and maybe judging a lot more in my free time, just because I was enjoying myself. I was having a good time, and maybe I'd want to do it more. I was working on getting my L2, kind of. I was working on the skills needed to become a level 2 judge more than the actual process of doing it, because as it turns out, most of my judging was at my local game shop. We didn't technically need a level 2 judge, and if I'm not judging elsewhere, what's really the difference, other than like the amount of work? But I did want to be good enough to be a level 2 judge, and in fact, the one instance where I did judge at a Grand Prix event, I guess they call it a Magic Fest now. Afterwards, I was playing some Judges Tower with the other judges, and I could hold my own against the L2s, which is saying something, you know. It's saying like at the very least, I have a similar level of knowledge, which was pretty cool. So maybe I'll pursue that again. That'd be kind of interesting. And one thing I want to ask people either watching now, or if you want to pop into the comments and weigh in on this. I know I have one guy who's my biggest fan. He's popping in all the time to try to rile me with his comments. As little as it just doesn't bother me. I more laugh at how hilariously stupid he is. But in any case, let me know if it'd be interesting. I was curious if you'd be interested in watching me go through the Judge Academy stuff on stream, or if I should just do that off stream in my own time. If people would find it interesting, I can do it. It's not a problem. I remember looking into it before and mostly being dissuaded because the first lesson was on like branding, which I don't like. Marketing is just not a thing that is particularly appealing to me. But also, as I'm streaming, it's more and more relevant, and we'll get to that in a bit as well. That'll be the end part of the stream, is the channel stuff. So let me know if that'd be interesting if you'd be interested in watching me do that on stream. Otherwise, I can do it on my free time. But past that, like, what else happened in the tournament? Well, smaller than last time. Didn't hit the player cap. I think it was 52 people. From the outset. Oh, Joe Lissette was there. He's a professional player. He was particularly known for playing Miracles back when Miracles didn't have access to Monastery Mentor, and when Sensei's Divining Top was unbanned. And he was particularly known for his like Legends centric build. Play you know what, let's like pull up some cards, have some visuals other than just my face. As gorgeous as it is, I'm sure you'd like to see other things to distract you from my brilliance. But back when he would have things like he played did I spell it wrong? I think it might be one L. I can spell click, but not Vendilion. Oh yes, play like Vendilion Click and Venser, Shaper, Savant alongside Caracas, which at the time was not a staple, by the way. Not everyone played Caracas. It was a little bit uncommon, and you only really played it if you had the Legends package, because Wasteland was more of an issue. The format was just very different then. And the reason why I mentioned that he was there was he was the guy that, watching him and watching this deck, I was like, this is really cool. I kind of want to play this, and it like interested me in playing Legacy and in playing Miracles in particular. It was really cool to meet him. I wanted to say something to him, but it felt like it would be pretty inappropriate to do that while he's still a player in a tournament that I'm judging. So I didn't say anything at the outset. I was gonna catch him before he left, but He just left in a moment where I wasn't paying attention, and so like I didn't even know when he left the event, and didn't get to say anything to him. But that was really cool to meet him. It's like it was one of those like minor gaming celebrities, or at the very least to my mind, right? Like someone that mattered to me, but wouldn't have known that he had that impact on me. But it was cool to meet him. As I say, 52 players. Went longer than usual this time. Every round went to time. I couldn't believe it. Last time, I remember there were like 6, 7, 8 deck list problems we found at the outset. This time, actual 0, which was pretty cool. Though I did find one deck list error in deck checking someone. They had written like 2 copies of the same card as opposed to 2 different cards. They like wrote Oath of Nissa, as opposed to Oath of Nissa, Elvish Visionary, which happens. Let's see what else. The top 8. Oh my god, there weren't a lot of interesting judge questions on the day. There were two that like stand out. One, player calls me over and they say, "Hey, can I is Unearth an activated ability?" Particularly referencing opponent's Cityscape Leveler in the graveyard. To which the answer is yes. Unearth is an activated ability. It doesn't say it here, but yes. Unearth is an activated ability. You pay the mana, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's not casting a spell. Clearly, the reason they asked that question... is there a comma? I forget. Yeah, alright, there's a comma. They were asking because the person who didn't have the Cityscape level in the graveyard, the other player, had a Karn the Great Creator. And they seemed like, yeah, well, it's an artifact. It's an activated ability, so you can't activate it. Now, they didn't ask me that. They asked me only if Unearth is an activated ability. And as a judge, I have to answer the question they ask. If I had prompted with the information that, yes, but it is not, you're not prevented from using it by the effects of Karn, that would be on the verge of strategic advice. This is why it's really, really important. The judges answer only the question you ask, and you have to ask the right questions that you want for to get the answers that you're looking for. And this was an instance where they didn't do that, and so I felt kind of bad, and I started to walk away. Someone I knew calls. It was like, "Hey, Ernest," and I was like, "Well, hold on. I know what you're thinking. I can't tell them." I said it in a way where like the players at the table couldn't hear me. I'm not trying to give information in that way either, but I was just like, I know you're understanding what's going on, but I can't tell them that. They call. I felt it felt pretty bad, but then they called me back like 10 seconds later, and they're like, "Okay, does Karn prevent the activation of Cityscape Leveler's Unearth ability?" To which the answer is no. Reason being is that despite this saying a type line saying artifact and this being an activated ability, while it's not on the battlefield, this card is not an artifact. It is an artifact card. It's a weird hair-splitting difference, but artifacts are only on the battlefield. Same thing with like creatures. There are no creatures outside of the battlefield. There are creature cards, or I guess creature tokens that are phased out. I guess those are still on the battlefield. That's not the point. So when Karn says activated abilities of artifacts your opponent's control can't be activated, that would affect Cityscape Leveler if it were on the battlefield. But in the graveyard, it's not an artifact. It's an artifact card, so you can activate it. Now, the person who had the Karn was really clearly not angle shooting either. Even if he was, obviously that's not the issue. It's not an issue for a judge. It's like it's a cultural etiquette type question. But he seemed seemed pretty clearly under the impression that it didn't work, and like that he was just being honest about like, well, no, it doesn't work, right? And not asking a misleading question on purpose. And once he was explained to him, he was like, oh shoot, yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, you definitely got this. Like, completely understanding. It's the kind of thing where like he shouldn't, like I shouldn't. It's one of those like you shouldn't have to defend yourself from asking a judge question. But there are a lot of people who will try to ask specific judge questions or use the methods of the system to gain an advantage, and just to be fair to that player, he was not doing that. Definitely not doing that. And so I just want to make clear, not that it really matters. It's not like anyone knows who this person is. The other interesting judge call, oh, it was such a nightmare. It was in the top 8. It was in the octafinals, the quarterfinals. And I'm watching one table because there was suspicion. Someone who was observing was suspicious that one of the players might have been either cheating or had his cards marked. Now, through watching that player, it was very clear to me that they were not. This was just they took a risk and it worked out. And obviously, these kinds of things can happen. But it's one of those, like, if you're observing, you do want the judge to pay attention and make sure that nothing untoward is happening. And it seems very clear that player absolutely was not cheating. And I checked his deck. There didn't seem to be any marks on his cards or anything like that. All on the level. Actually, in a similar way, when I was deck checking previously, I guess to go off on another tangent, there was an instance where I was deck checking someone and I was like, oh, the bottom 20 cards or so of their deck don't have any lands, which isn't necessarily suspicious because, like, oh, like, what does it matter if they're on the bottom? But remember, your opponent cuts your deck. So what was on the bottom was near the top. It's one of those, like, it's like not necessarily suspicious, but you start to look, once you notice that, you start to look for other things. Then I noticed that the top 7 cards of their deck were an absolutely insane hand. Just super, super good. Like among the best hands you could really ask for, which was also suspicious. But I can't really confirm anything, and this is why I kind of don't like that deck checks are. You're kind of advised during a deck check to look for stuff like that because you can't determine anything in any meaningful way. But I watched him for a little bit, and it seemed pretty clear. Again, not cheating, just randomization happens, and when randomization happens, things like that will occur. Sometimes you'll get really good hands, and there won't be any lands on the bottom 20 cards of your deck. It's random. It's a variance. These things happen. So anyway, I was watching the other table where I was concluding that the player suspected was not cheating, and I overhear from the table on the other side of me, oh, I think I'm pretty sure I can play a land. Okay, I'll play my land. And the other guy going, no, I don't think so, because I don't think you have a land here. Okay, this kind of question comes up all the time, and normally the assumption is if you are unsure whether you played your land, you did. This way, you're never playing 2 lands, and sometimes you're playing 0 lands, but, we're erring on the side of not cheating. But there was an uncertainty, except by his opponent. So now what do we do? Well, now we start to figure out, did he play a land this turn? And we can, there are some tools we can use to do that. And one of the things I did was I asked, okay, player A, the one who's supposed to have played a land, who thinks he can play a land. What did you play last turn? He's like, okay, well, I played the Treasure Cruise for 1 mana. I played a Ledger Shredder for 2 mana. I played a tap land, and I had 1 extra land untapped. And I know that because my opponent made a decision to pay 2 life for his shock land in order to play around the Spell Pierce he thought I might have been representing. Opponent agrees that yes, he did shock the land in to avoid Spell Pierce issues. To play around Spell Pierce. So clearly, that breakdown all works out, because we could determine that that's when the Legislator came in, the Treasure Cruise, all that. Cool. So that means he should have had 5 lands at the start of his turn. There were 5 lands before the land drop for this turn. Clearly, he has not played a land this turn. So we're good, right? No, we weren't good at all. Because his opponent, player B, was insistent, no, because I went first this game. This would be his 6th land, and I only have 4. I definitely haven't missed 2 land drops this game. I would have felt super behind, and I didn't. And we're like, okay, but I can't do anything about your feelings of being behind. That's not evidence for anything. On top of which, if we've pretty clearly determined that a land has not been played this turn. So multiple, if you're correct that you haven't missed a land, multiple lands would have had to have happened on a previous turn, which I could not possibly determine, let alone fix. But he's not satisfied. Okay, let's do a little more looking around. Now we're like, okay, what do we play on each turn of the game? And literally reconstructing every turn of the game on player B's side to figure out like if he missed land drops or whatever. And we're like counting the total mana worth of spells he casts. It's like, okay, well before this turn you cast 11 mana worth of spells, which on 3 lands you could play by turn 5, which means you definitely missed 1 land drop, but I can't say for sure 2. That said, in thinking about it, 11 mana worth of spells does necessitate 2 missed land drops when he made his 4th land on that turn. Because, remember, it's on the turns before this. Because, yes, on 3 lands, you can spend 11 mana over the course of 5 turns. But you don't start with those 3 lands in play. It's 1, then 2, then 3, right? Which means if you start counting it up, you actually can only spend 11 mana on spells by turn 6. Or by turn 5, excuse me. Which means you've missed 2 land drops. You hit your 4th land drop on turn 6. Your opponent is playing their 6th land. It all works out. But he's not satisfied. And he's like super mad about it. And he's like, now I'm going to lose the game because because my opponent is playing an extra land or whatever. And you can't fix this. And it's like, okay, well, if you're saying that your ruling is that we're just going to proceed from here because he is allowed to play his land, can I respond to his last spell, which I would have done because I thought he didn't have a land to play? And I was like, well, no, I can't back up for strategic value because you misunderstood the game state. But he's so mad about it. No joke, on this tiny thing, 10 to 20 minutes we spent on it. So long. On like most judge calls are less than a minute. The somewhat interesting ones might be a couple of minutes. This is for real at least 15 minutes. I'm not exactly sure how long we spent on it, but a long time. Finally, we come to the I'm like, you know what? I'm sorry. This is my ruling. I'm a little too permissive. I do know this. One thing I think I need to put my foot down a little bit more as a judge. I know I did try a little bit, but I was trying as much as possible to also lead to a positive player experience. Like I don't want to just like lay down a ruling and be like, hey, if you don't proceed from here, you're starting to get warnings. You can do that, especially larger tournaments, but this is a small one. I want people to walk away being like, I'm glad I came to this tournament. Maybe that's not a thought that necessarily should be in my mind in a case like this, but I was putting up with more than I should have. And I really should have just done just like, this is my ruling. We're going with this, and I need you to continue with the game. That's something I have to get better at. And talking about it now makes it very clear that that's something I could have improved on, which is always what you should be trying to do in every aspect of your life. Try to improve, and improvement, in the way you feel that improvement is improvement. I don't mean like you have to be, better than everyone else at the thing or whatever. Just mean like, you know what? I wish I could, be able to do this thing a little bit better. Cool. Then, work on it. But anyway, after it's all said and done and like, all right, this is my ruling. I need you to keep playing. The player B is like, all right, well, I guess I'm just going to jam my spell into the spell pierce that I thought he had. But player A didn't have a spell pierce, so none of it mattered. And he was like, oh, I guess it didn't matter then. And we spent all this time on it, and it just didn't matter anyway. I was so frustrated. As it turns out, player B lost that round, and being in the quarterfinals, that meant single elimination. He just didn't have a reason to be there, so he left. And subsequently, a lot of jokes were being made about the happenstance. None at the expense of player B, to be fair. But it was a very weird feeling having people make jokes and like meme on a ruling when it's my ruling. I've seen it before, right? Like the instance where a player names Borborygmos with pithing needle, but it doesn't actually work because it's supposed to be Borborygmos enraged, and that's what he meant, but that's not what he said. And so there were like people were joking about like later in that tournament, someone as a joke names Grizzlebrand enraged with the do you spell Grizzlebrand? Uh, oh, it's within his S. Someone names Gristlebrand enraged with their pithing needle as a joke. Like, okay, that's a funny. So when I was like, I enjoyed that joke. It was funny to me too, but it was weird being like, oh, that's my ruling that people are making these jokes about. And in fact, in the semifinals, player A from the quarterfinals was like, "Did I play a land this trip?" Just like he's not even making a joke, just like musing to himself at some point in the game. And I'm like, "Don't do this to me again, man." Like if you're not sure, you've played a land. I'm not doing this again. He's like, "No, it's not worth it." Especially because that game round, that semifinal match, was 2 hours long, and it's one of those like. Okay, normally you have time rounds, but not in the top cut. Those are untimed, and people are still supposed to keep their pace of play appropriate. They were. Like, I was watching the whole time. No one was really playing slow. They were taking their time with some stuff. But for the most part, it was just a really grindy matchup where they weren't rushing to finish in time. And, oh my god, 2 hours. We were all, like, super exhausted at that point, and it was kind of lucky that it was an RCQ because the finalists both receive an invitation to the event. I think this one was for Atlanta. I don't remember, but both receive an invite anyway. The difference between first and second is the amount of prize credit and a lanyard. While they agreed to splitting the prize credit evenly between first and second, as you were allowed to do, they always. Oh man, that's another thing. Players always have this, and it's unfortunate that it exists this way, but I'll explain also why it is. People are always really worried about what they're allowed to offer when it comes to a prize split, and because they've heard the horror stories of people getting DQ'd because they said the wrong thing. I've heard a story where two players are playing and one goes, "Would you concede to me?" And the other guy goes, "For a pack? Sure," and reaches out his hand. A judge overhears it and disqualifies both of them. And it sucks because the first player offer didn't offer anything in exchange for the concession, just asked for a concession, which you're allowed to do at any time. Your opponent doesn't have to concede. They can just be like, "No, I'm good. Let's play." But you're allowed to ask. And his opponent was the one who suggested the exchange. But it's really important so that this Magic is seen not as a gambling game for legal reasons, that matches of Magic are determined by nothing except the results of the match of Magic. This is why you can't flip a coin. That would be a gambling thing. You can't offer things in exchange. It's like bribery. You can't do that. But you can just say, "Hey, would you like to concede to me?" You can also offer to reallocate the amount of the pricing in a way that does not reference the player. So as an example, and this is what happens in finals constantly, is you say, "Hey, how about a split where first place gets like the cool trophy that they're playing for, like maybe like there's an invitation on the line or whatever, and second place gets all of the prize credit." Maybe the players will agree to that. And then maybe the players, having agreed to that, will still play their game. And the reason why they might still play the game is because both of them might think that they're incentivizing the other person to concede because they actually want the invitation or the trophy or whatever it is that first place gets, but don't really care about the prize credit. Alternatively, you could offer that and then go, "You know what? I don't care about that stuff. I'll just concede to you." These things kind of happen, and like the implications are kind of whatever. But like the point is, you don't want to give the indication that you're trying to bribe the other player. So they were pretty clear about that, and they agreed that first and second will get equal pricing, and then the player who had just played his 2-hour match was like, "You know what? I'll just concede. I don't care enough about the lanyard. You can have it." And there you go. So that was the tournament. All told, it was pretty interesting. Very different suite of decks than we saw last time. Last time, Mono White Humans was really dominant. Now, I'm not saying like that's because the deck was necessarily in a better position. It might just been like happenstance. Pilots matter, and what decisions people are making, and matchups and all this stuff. still, 3 out of the top 4 were mono white humans last time. This time there was a much bigger suite of decks. And one thing I did find really interesting, there was this blue-red deck that I thought was really cool that utilized this card. Now, if you're familiar with Pioneer, you're probably very familiar with this card. Same if you play Standard or whatever. I imagine this card gets seen. This sees a decent amount of play, but I don't keep up that much with shorter term constructed formats. I mostly pay attention to Legacy, the little that I do, and I play like Commander or whatever. But this card I was really impressed with, and for a couple of reasons that I just kind of want to talk about. This deck seemed really cool just because it was leveraging this card so much, and it was this like blue-red control deck. I like playing control decks. I know, I'm a terrible person. But also, this first effect, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. This ability triggers once each turn. Incredibly powerful. There was a game where this player's opponent played a Pithing Needle, naming Chandra's Hope's Beacon. Chandra Hope's Beacon. And just like, okay, so he can't use any of these loyalty abilities, and it still was, this effect was so powerful that he ended up being able to leverage it into a winning game state before. I don't know if he ever dealt with the Pithing Needle, but like ended up being able to leverage this ability irrespective of being able to use the activated abilities. Now I know this is literally just what's a double play, I think it is. No, not double play. There's an enchantment that does this for 1 less. But, of course, this comes attached to a Planeswalker, which means most of the time, when you don't have a Pithing Needle locking you get access to these really powerful effects. This +2, crazy strong when you're... +2, add 2 mana of any combination of colors. Very, very strong when your commander... sorry, not commander. When your Planeswalker costs 6 mana, you can tap out for this, add 2 mana, cast some removal spell, get 2 of them, clear the board to protect your Planeswalker. Very strong, especially because now she'll have 7 loyalty. This +1, exile top 5 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell from among those exiled cards. It does rip through your deck a decent amount, but that's not that big a deal. It gives you card selection, it gives you card advantage, it gives you a spell to double, because also a thing to note is this triggered ability is just like the enchantment, on each player's turn. So if you cast an instant during your opponent's turn, you get a lot of value there. And then this -X, I didn't see that get leveraged that much. In fact, there was one game where I think the player using this, playing this deck, could have used this minus ability to better effect. But even still, like even having not used it very much, these other 2 abilities are incredibly strong. In particular, there was a neat thing I saw done with the Chandra, which, remember, has a lot of loyalty counters. If you go play her plus removal spell, next turn plus, she has 9 counters on her, right? Saw it used in conjunction with Light Up the Night. Now, Light Up the Night is a okay removal spell. Like, this is the kind of card you play in limited, and it'll be efficient, and probably not good outside of that. But we'll get to why it was useful here. Light Up the Night, so it's X in a red. Light Up the Night deals X damage to any target. It deals X plus 1 damage instead if that target is a creature or planeswalker. Basically, it's better as a removal spell than a burn spell, but you're paying for as much mana as you deal for the most part. That's not the part that... So the front side of this was mostly just a removal spell, which, you can, for example, with Chandra, play Chandra +2, deal 2 damage to 2 targets. Or like 2 damage twice. You can do it to the same target if you want. But, alright, that's already that's like fine. But then this flashback. 3 in a red, which Chandra pays for half of. Not that it's that important. You played Chandra. You have 6 mana at least. Remove up to X loyalty counters from among planeswalkers you control. X can't be 0. So that sets the value of X. And there was some game where it's like, there a couple of... like your opponent played a couple of Shocklands or something. They're at 16. And he goes... And it was that exact thing I was saying. Play Chandra, plus play a removal spell. Cool, we're on 7 counters. Also, your board is clear, so you're not attacking Chandra. Untap, plus, she's up to 9 counters. Flashback, Light Up the Night. Remove all but 1 counter from Chandra. X is 8. Deal 16 to you, because this gets copied, and the X was 8. crazy, crazy strong. Now, obviously, this is probably not the primary win condition. If I had to guess, Light Up the Night is like a 1 or a 2 of. But it is cool that you have that kind of power. This deck seemed really interesting to me, and if I were to play Pioneer, this would be a deck I'd be interested in playing. It seems like a lot of fun. One thing I was a little surprised at was like some of his sideboarding decisions, but that's not neither here nor there. It seemed like a really cool deck. Other than that, there wasn't really anything else I wanted to say about the event. It was a lot of fun, and as I say, I think I'll be looking into judging more going forward. I had put it down for a while, but I think we can go back to it. All right. Last but not least, before we sign off for the day, I know it's going to be kind of a quicker one, but it's mostly because I didn't want to get into anything. I just wanted to like chat as opposed to getting into anything. Is channel stuff. So start with why I missed a couple of days last week. One partial reason was I was just kind of burnt out. I've been streaming, I think, a little too much. That's not necessarily a problem, and it's the kind of thing where if I develop more of an audience, I think I would be able to stream more even than I had been previously. It's just a matter of, at the moment, I'm mostly talking into the void, which I can do, but to do that for like 2 to 3 hours, like 2 hours, even when I finish after 2 hours, it feels like it's not that long a stream. Maybe I should have gone for longer. But 2 hours a day and just talking to yourself gets a little hard. So I think what I'm going to do, we're going to dial it back to Monday through Thursday. We might dial it back further to Monday through Wednesday. We'll see how I feel. So that's part one, just to be a little easier on myself. I'm still interested in keep going with this. I do appreciate any time anyone watches, especially if you are active in chat. It is very much appreciated. So thank you, Galit. I know you often are, and I know Peachy Keen often is, and a couple other people. Amazon Kane, but I mean she's a little biased. So that's part one. Part two, I talked to a friend of mine who also streams and has been doing this for longer than I have, certainly. I mean, obviously I barely started. And one of his suggestions was that maybe I should look at moving to Kick, which is another platform, fairly new. And because it's fairly new, they don't have a lot of there's not that much competition in the form of people with enormous audiences. So I think starting next week, I'm going to be looking into it this week. I think I'm going. I'll let you know if there's a change to that. I think I'm going to look into that platform. In fact, why don't we do that a little bit here? Just take a look at this platform. My understanding is they don't have that many. Oh, that slots and casinos, their number one, is a bit concerning. But yeah, like you can see a little bit of like who their top people are and how many viewers they have. It's not a small platform, which is pretty cool. But they don't have the like mega giants at the moment. So I think I will look into. I think I will look into moving to Kick. In my YouTube page, what I'll do is I'll put a link there, and I think what I'd want to do is upload the VODs to YouTube. So I'm still there. I won't be like gone from YouTube forever. I don't intend to be, at least. But I think I'm gonna move to Kick for where I'm streaming. I think they do. Well, I mean, there's just chatting. So I'm sure they have categories for. Yeah, even in their top, they have people with only like a few hundred. They probably have categories for like politics or whatever else. So we'll be moving there. Additionally, well, I guess the last thing I was going to say about channel stuff was going to be is more stuff for me. I guess it's not something I need to necessarily share with you, but well, you know what, I might as well. I'm going to try to be popping into other communities to be active there, and that'll be like an avenue for trying to improve my outreach, because I am interested in getting people watching me. I think I have interesting stuff to say, but one of the things that I'm noticing is, well, when I'm a debate oriented channel, I should get into debates, and it's going to be hard to do unless people know who I am or are willing to talk to me, and that unfortunately does require a little bit of an audience. So those are the plans for the future. As I say, I do intend to keep uploading to YouTube, so like, don't worry, I'm not gonna like you won't have to go to Kick in order to watch my stuff. Not that that's necessarily a problem, but if you're like super worried, I don't know. Some people don't like leaving what they're comfortable with. I'm even noticing now Kick is saying or it says like right under their logo that they're in beta. So if they're that new, then yeah, I think we'll be hopping over there and I'll just for continuity's sake, we'll do that next week. We won't start it right away. One question that came to mind was dual streaming. Can I stream to both Kick and YouTube? As I understand it, OBS, that's the streaming software I use, and as I understand it, most streaming software can't really handle that, which makes sense to me. It'd be pretty hard to stream to just as a software to stream to multiple services at once. That'd be kind of tough. So as I understand it, that's not really possible. I'll check. Like as I'm looking into this, I'll see if that's doable. If not, just don't expect it, right? I'll let you know otherwise. But yeah, that's all I really got for today. I know it was kind of a brief one, but I wanted to give you a little bit of time to adjust to my beardlessness, to acclimate yourselves. I know it's jarring. I know it's difficult for everybody. Please try not to try to contain yourselves. Try not to get overwhelmed. But that all said, I hope that's helpful. Also, I hope you appreciate seeing like how I approach it, like my thoughts about where to go from here. But yeah, that's all I've got for today. So thanks so much for watching. I will catch you all again next time. Tomorrow we'll do some debate review. Since we missed a couple of days, and then also today we didn't review any content or anything like that. We'll do some debate review. We'll take as long as it takes. If it takes multiple days, that's what we're gonna do. But for now, that's all I've got. So thanks so much for watching. Have a good one, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.